We have a full room here.
Don't take it personally.
I'm not taking it personally. So today I want to talk a little bit about how we can move Java forward faster together. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on talking about how you can participate in the technology to evolve it, to accelerate, to move faster, as well as give you some details in terms of what we at Oracle are trying to do in terms of evolving the platform at a much more rapid pace. So just a little bit about me. I may seem like an old-timer. I've been with the Java organization since 2001. That might seem like a long time. It may sound like I'm old. I just say that I'm refined. And there are many people here that were part of the Java organization or part of Sun who are now part of Oracle. Or you have a lot of speakers here today who have been part of the ecosystem in terms of driving the technology faster. So if you want to stay in touch, by all means, you can troll me on Twitter, or you can just email me. So before I begin, I just want to talk a little bit about Java. I know you might be users of it. It's one thing to use the technology, but it's another thing to understand that Java, since its inception, has been a technology built by developers for developers. And what do I mean by that? This isn't a language and a platform that was primarily created by just one entity, to be driven by one entity, by one company, by one person. It's taken contributions from a variety of developers, both inside the enterprises that have stewarded Java forward, as well as developers worldwide. And you all play a vital role in terms of shaping that future. So it's one thing to sit at your desk and use the technology every day. That's one part of it. But you have a responsibility, an opportunity to actually shape where we go in the future. Some of you might know James Governor. He's part of RedMonk. It's a analyst house. He has a famous quote that says, and I'll read it for you, it's short, "When web companies grow up, they turn into Java shops." And the thing is, a lot of companies try out new technologies just because it's cutting edge, just because it might solve an immediate problem, or it might be the new cool thing to do. But eventually, most enterprises become Java shops. There's a few companies here that have adopted Java after trying other platforms and technologies and languages and realized we can actually garner and gain better performance, benefit, security, all of those abilities that we sometimes overlook by standardizing our IT infrastructure and architectural decisions by moving over to Java. So once that's done, that's one part of the equation. The other part is just staying true to our core foundations. And that's something that you're all part of. You are the ecosystem. You are the community. You are the contributors. You are the users. It's important your voice gets heard in terms of where we take the platform in the future. And as stewards of Java, Oracle has a lot of resources for you to take advantage of and be part of. One, of course, is Java Magazine. If you're not subscribing to it, I highly recommend that you subscribe to it. It's a free digital online publication. It's a technology magazine through and through. It is not meant to be marketing. It is meant to give you technical resources to better understand how to utilize and implement the Java language and platform. Oh, and by the way, you can actually contribute articles. So never fear that you can actually share your knowledge, your experiences, the use cases that you've developed, the best practices that you've tested out. It's an opportunity for you to share that knowledge with the world. From a community aspect, you actually have some folks in the room that actually are responsible for moving Java community forward. You have Stephen Chin, who's to my left. You have Yolande Poiret, somewhere in the back or the front, who's one of our Java community managers. You have Heather Van Cura, who's the director of the Java community process. These are people you need to get to know. You need to reach out to. You need to stay in touch with. You need to follow. You need to listen to. They have the pulse on what's happening. Their day jobs is to monitor, listen, and respond, and sometimes proactively, sometimes reactively, to the ever flowing changes and ebbs and flows of what's happening around us in the larger technology ecosystem. I'm not sure. Is there a Java group in Oahu? I see that as an opportunity. There are several enterprises I know that are down in Honolulu with huge development shops. It's a chance for you to come together, be brave, stand up a user group here in Oahu. It'll give you a chance to share your best practices, your questions, your concerns with each other. And that's how you foster further education. You know, my father has a famous quote. He says, "You know less than you know." I never knew what that meant when I was growing up. It took me a while to figure that out. But basically it means every day is a new learning opportunity for you. And the way you can accelerate that learning and that education is by speaking with, meeting with, and staying connected with your peers in this vibrant community we have around Java. So if you don't have a Java user group, I think today's the day we decide that's a goal you should make possible in 2018. And like I said, you have people here who are willing to help you get that started. Now, collaboration. There are so many experts around the world, whether you have them here natively in Hawaii or globally. We live in a digital world. There are Java champions around the world who are willing to help you, to listen to you, to help you with your problems, or more importantly, help you with your opportunities. At the end of today, you have an opportunity to talk to all of the experts in this room to find out, how do I make a connection? How do I stay in a motion that's continual with all of those experts that are around us? I see a lot of young faces in this room who may not have a lot of history with Java, and I have to say, you have so many peers that have spent 10, 20, 22, 23 years on the technology that you can start developing a relationship with. And then finally, contribution. Now that's the most important part. How do we move Java forward faster? It's by you being involved in the process. It's not just by using it, it's by contributing to it, helping shape its future. If you're not part of the process, just like when voting, you don't have much say. Two other areas I wanted to highlight again. I mentioned the JCP Standards Body in terms of determining the standards around Java. You have Heather Van Curie, like I said, she's in the back of the room. Please talk to her. Raise your hand. Does everyone know where she is? There she is. Become part of the JCP. Listen to what's going on, even if it's just reading the notes and finding out what's happening from the meetings. It'll give you a pulse of why certain decisions are being made. A lot of times what happens is we play the question game of why did they? Why didn't they? And a lot of times the answer has already been determined. It's important that you stay connected. It doesn't have to be on a daily basis, but on a weekly basis, monthly basis. Do a check-in. Find out what's happening in those conversations, and it won't be so foreign to you why certain decisions have been made in terms of what to do or what not to do with the platform. And I'm actually pretty thrilled to see this. I mean, I think we have an even split of men and women in this room in terms of attendees. It's great to see that, but we actually do need to get more women involved in technology. And for those of the women in the room, the J-Duchess program is a great way for you to actually take technology directly to your fellow women peers locally. So if you need help finding out how do I set up a local chapter, again, we have people in this room that can help you with that. So what has all of that participation, that collaboration, that community effort done? Well, since 1995, we had several releases of the platform, major releases. If I could ask, is anyone on using a version older than Java 8? Java 7? Java 6? I saw one hand. One hand. Be brave. It's okay. All I can say is, please start upgrading and moving. You're missing out on all the performance benefits, all the security improvements by staying on an older version. And I understand some enterprises have standardized on certain releases that are dependent on how an application was built. I get that. But with the pace of way technology is moving these days, if you're not moving on to the latest releases and latest platforms, you're missing out on some huge performance improvements. So our latest release, Java 9, I'll go into a little bit of the highlights on that, since that was our most current release that we shipped in September. So what I want to talk to you about, at least for me, is talk about a little bit of the behind the scene improvements, some new functionality, and some new standards, the ones that at least stand out for me. In terms of getting a better understanding around Java 9, please go take a look at OpenJDK. We have almost 100 new features and improvements that we've made. That's huge. And sometimes it might be difficult to get a handle on all of the things that are inherent in the platform that can benefit me, but do spend some time looking through it. It's a long list. But as we say, you know less than you know. Continue that learning journey and do that exploration. Now, with Java 8, when we introduced lambdas, everyone assumed, well, boy, that is a syntactical candy release. It's going to make me productive. It's something I can immediately utilize. And unfortunately, Java 9 has gotten bad connotation as being a medicine release. This is going to be painful. But the reality is, it's all depending on how you taste the technology. And there's a lot of sweetness to Java 9. So let's go through some of those areas of Java 9 that I find very beneficial. So behind the scene improvements. So these are things you just get inherently out of the box if you're using Java 9. One in particular that I think is very important to highlight is search. Boy, that sounds like an obvious thing to have. Search capabilities. Boy, were we slow to introduce something that was functional in the platform in terms of you being able to find information. Not just in terms of the libraries, but when you create an application, we now have a search field that is extremely intelligent, that's camel case sensitive, that'll allow you to go and find information at a much more accelerated pace. I actually think, for me, personally, this is long overdue, and just by having that search box there is a huge improvement. In terms of new features and functionality, goes without saying, the most obvious one is Project Jigsaw, where we modularize the platform. Now, this might sound painful. Why would you do that? But the reality is, when you modularize a platform, that means you can then take inherently the pieces that make the most sense for you in terms of your application needs. So one of the tools we introduced in Java 9 is called Java Linker. This is important. It's not just about modularizing the platform. It's about modularizing your application. And size does matter. In this case, smaller is better. You don't want to inherently drag all of the pieces and components that your application doesn't need. And so by using Java Linker, this will help you actually modularize your own application. So let's just walk through that a little bit. So here's a set of Java SE modules. And say you have an application that has a dependency on specific modules, and only those two specific modules. Well, those themselves have some dependencies as well, highlighted here. The rest of it, if your application doesn't need it, why would you want to pull it? And that's where modularity comes in. It allows you to just focus on those pieces that your application needs, thus creating a smaller runtime for your application. And this is beneficial in this new cloud world we live in, especially when you think about containers. How heavy do you want your containers, especially when you're spinning up container after container after container after container? What are the size of that? Well, I only want the pieces that make sense to my application. And of course, adopting new standards, one of the areas that I find very useful is the fact that we're now able to generate HTML5 compliant markup. I think that's huge. So please take a look at it. And this is where you can break out your cameras and just take a picture. There's a lot, like I said, a lot of improvements, a lot of enhancements, a lot of things that will help you become much more productive in terms of your utilization of Java. Now, before we talk about how we at Oracle as stewards are going to accelerate the pace of development, I did want to focus a little bit about in terms of the platforms we're targeting. So starting with Java 9, we are only focusing on a 64-bit architecture, and these are the only platforms we're focusing on. So we used to have a lot of binaries for ARM architectures. Those have all been contributed into OpenJDK. And moving forward, we won't be creating any customized builds for embedded. You can actually do that yourselves. Think about it. You can take advantage of Project Jigsaw and actually do that on your own. And there are also other vendors out there. But one point that's important to share is for Java 8, all of the platforms that came out and were supported in Java 8, those will remain unchanged. This change to shifting to 64-bit won't affect you if you are using and continue to use Java 8.
Is ARM only Linux builds still?
Yes. So before getting into our rapid release cadence, I want to talk a little bit story about the hare and the tortoise. I know we all know this story. We all know who wins. Who won? Tortoise or the hare? The tortoise. Because we thought pace matters. It's not a race, it's a marathon. But what if I said they both won? Kind of changed the story, kind of changed the narrative. But that's okay. What we're trying to do with Java 10 and moving forward is go to a rapid release, but still have stable builds. So it's really up to you to determine at what speed do you want to go. Are you all about innovation and you want to go for speed, or are you all about stability and support? So let's walk through that a little bit. So when you think about our new release train, think no more limousines. It's all about trains. It's about pace. It's about hitting every station. So if you look at our current JDK release model, on average, we tried to push out a major release every 2 years. A major release every 2 years with some level of support, which was then followed on by another major release after 2 years, followed on by support for some time horizon, some duration. And that's basically the pace we've been going at. It's not quite reality. Yes, there has been some delays in terms of shipping, like we did with Java 9 and a few others. So between 2, maybe 3 years, that was the commitment and the promise we were trying to make. So if we dive into that, what does that mean? That means with 9, for example, we ship 9, 6 months later we'd have an update release, 6 months later we'd have yet another update release, 6 months later yet another one, and then if you think about it, 6 months later, we would have then shipped the next major release. We're on this 2-year sort of cycle. And with each dot release, we'd have CPU improvements, we'd have some feature enhancements, we'd take care of bugs. But what would happen is if we had a major feature that actually changed the spec, we couldn't ship it in that release. We'd have to wait until the next release train 2 years later or 3 years later. And we would be missing out as developers on that new feature that could significantly change our productivity. So what are we doing? Well, first we're going to go to a 6-month release cadence cycle. So we just shipped 9 in September. The next release will happen in March of 2018 this year. The next major release will then be September of 2018 this year. But we're going to fix the numbering on that because we consider each of these a major release. So we're just going to go sequentially. 9 just shipped. 10 will ship in March. 11 will ship in September of 2018. 12 in 2019, March. 13, 2019, September. That'll be our rapid cadence release. But what does that mean in terms of long-term support? And that's important, especially if you have an enterprise that requires indemnification, that sort of security you get from a vendor. How can I get that? Well, if you look back at some of our previous releases, typically what you would have is companies standardizing on a specific release for about every 3 years. So what we're doing is starting with Java 11, and if you do the math, that was September, this is going to happen September this year, that will become the long-term supported release for Java. And then we'd follow on every 3 years. So the next one would then be with Java 17, long-term support. So what does 18.9, 21.9 LTS mean? That's just an internal numbering scheme for us. 18.9 just means the year and month, where you would then be able to get long-term support from Oracle for a major release. But what happens to 9 and 10 and 12 and 13 and 14 and all of those in-between 6-month releases, in between these LTSs? Well, first off, we're not changing anything in terms of our previous releases, with the exception of Java 8. We will be supporting that a little bit longer. We understand this is a fundamental change, and some enterprises may not want to shift to Java 9, so we're going to extend the support life on Java 8 specifically. And then there's also the question of, well, I was using OpenJDK, but then I licensed the Oracle JDK. How is that going to work out? Well, as you can see, 9 and 10 will have a very short shelf life. And in terms of our Oracle JDK features, what we've already declared at Java 1 this past year in 2017 is we're going to take all of the commercial features, flight recorder, mission control. Those enterprise features that you could only get if you were licensing Java directly from Oracle, we're going to expose that and make that inherent and part of the open JDK distribution. So let's abstract this a little bit away and see what that really means. So every 6 months, we'll have a major release of Java, 9. Once 9 has come out, now we'll go to 10. What happens to 9? It's no longer supported. When we go from 11 to 12, what happens to 11? It's no longer supported. There's just no way for us to keep up that level of support pace. So that's why we're going to a 3-year support model. So you can get support with the LTSS releases, with 11, with 17, and 23, and so on. But this isn't about throughput. It's not about how much can we get out there. It's about how much latency we can reduce in terms of giving you the most innovative pieces and features so you don't have to wait as long like you did between Java 6 and Java 7, Java 8, and now Java 9. We want to get those enhancements, those new features and functionalities out to you if you want to be on the bleeding edge and cutting edge. But if support and stability is primary and center of your enterprise, you do then have an option. So this is just more, again, to sort of outline all of that for you. Another opportunity to take a picture. And then lastly, what are the next steps for you? Well, first and foremost, go download Java 9 if you have not tried it out. At least explore it, test out the features that are inherent in it so you can get a sense of familiarity, especially since we've moved to a module system. If you're not going to become comfortable with it now, I can tell you you won't be comfortable with modules 3 releases from now. An opportunity to learn. Again, you know less than you know. Join the mailing lists. Again, you've got to read and stay on top of this. In terms of what we are doing, we are completely transparent with the direction we're taking. What we choose to do, what we choose not to do. It shouldn't be foreign to you. When a release ships, when we GA, it should come at no surprise what are some of those decisions. We are completely transparent in our mailing lists in terms of those decisions. And lastly, just to understand what's happening behind the scenes, follow us on OpenJDK. You can also follow, if you're not already following at Java, hopefully you all are, where you can get a lot of the community information, what's happening in the ecosystem, but specifically to what's happening in terms of on the engineering side, please follow us at OpenJDK. And then lastly, don't believe anything I just said. Anyway, thank you. Absolutely.
One quick question for you. So, does Oracle have any sort of metrics or measurements that are driving the decision to this new sort of faster cadence, or is it just sort of the...
We're trying to, so we have a lot of information based on what some emerging technologies are doing and the pace that they're keeping. And based on that, we don't want to throttle innovation for the platform. Like I said, it used to take us sometimes 2 to 3 years to ship a major feature. And we don't want to deny the ecosystem the opportunity to take advantage of some of that new functionality. So by going through this rapid release cadence, it doesn't really matter. It just has to line up in that 6-month cycle. So there may be things, say, for example, in 10 that don't really excite you. It may ship in 11. You don't have to wait 3 years now. It's going to come in 6 months. So it's much quicker for you to actually be on the bleeding edge and cutting edge. And it's just a nature of where technology as a whole is going.
But, and I guess then my fear is that perhaps that rapid sort of mutation of the language could also be a disincentive for folks who are trying, like, especially if we're trying to grow, let's say, new adoptees of the language. A moving target can be somewhat off-putting.
I actually would counterpose that, saying going to a faster cadence will accelerate adoption. The fact that we actually have stable bills every 3 years, which is pretty much the industry norm, gives you a chance to keep your feet firm on something that's stable, but still be on that sort of bleeding edge. And the reality is technology as a whole is moving at such an increased and rapid pace. If we don't adopt some of these accelerated practices for Java, then we're inhibiting innovation, and that will then give some other language or platform the opportunity to leapfrog the value that Java has in the enterprise.
Perhaps. I guess, I think I see, I work at Twitter, full transparency. I think we see value in JVM, evolution there. My concern is the language itself. Is it better to invest in newer languages on the JVM, or is it better to mutate the Java language to catch up?
That's a great question. I think it really comes down to what your end goals are within your enterprise. I'm a firm believer that use the right language, tool, platform, technology that makes sense for your business. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say, thou must use Java. I would never say that. Use a technology that makes the most sense for you. And in fact, if you are using some of these new emerging languages, you can still take advantage of the VM. It's just choice matters. And I'm not going to prescribe that this is a Java-only world. Please. Although, are the Oracle microphones off? Some things I probably shouldn't be saying right now.
Maybe this has already been sort of discussed on the Open JDK mailing list in detail, but do we know when Flight Recorder will actually be Open JDK?
So at Java 1, we made the commitment that it would happen in calendar year 2018. That's the plan of record. That's the plan of record. And work has started almost the day after Java 1 to actually do that. Absolutely. And if you, like I said, follow the mailing lists, follow the mailing lists, you can actually keep up with the progress. Yep. No, that's a good question, and thank you for it.
I have a question. I've used the Oracle JDK a lot, but I've never really used Open JDK. What's the technical difference between those two?
Well, yes. I can. So the question is, what's the difference between OpenJDK and Oracle JDK? I think I'm summarizing your question, but that's the essence of what you've asked. So Oracle JDK is something that you do license from Oracle that comes inherent with some commercial features, such as I said, flight recorder and mission control. That's number one. It's also something that we actually provide support for, versus OpenJDK, where you're at the beholden of the community providing support off the mailing lists and forums, right? So if you're an enterprise, you have a choice. If you have a development project where you want to test out some of that new feature and innovation, by all means you can use OpenJDK, but at a certain point, a lot of enterprises want a stable release that's gone through all of the testing and has support behind it. And I fully expect the LTS releases, there will be competition with other companies also offering support on those releases too. So I think it's healthy. So in conclusion, participate, participate, participate.
You guys just jealous of the pace of JavaScript and catch up?
It's not a jealousy of JavaScript or any other technology. It's just the further evolution of the pace we keep. We have the opportunity to move faster, to put innovation in your hands much more rapidly, and I think it's the right decision to make. And it's always tough being the session right before lunch, so I'm keeping you from lunch, so I apologize.
So we're recording this one, so we can ask, the questions can be asked. Any more questions? I was running out for this. Come on. No?
I can ask one.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Oh, here comes the curveball. I have never been able to hit curveballs.
Wow.
Right.
Okay. My question is, how do you do Jigsaw in a 6-month release? Or is that the sort of thing that you're going to work on it for like 2 years and then Java 13 is going to have some massive feature change? I mean, there are big things that require more than 6 months to do.
It does. I couldn't even begin to think about how I can't predict the future, right? So we don't necessarily know what's going to happen, in 13, 14, 15. That's going to be considered a dramatic change. I do know today that in terms of a modular system, that's just the right thing to do because it makes you much more productive and creates a much smaller footprint for you. I don't see us reverting back to a state where you will have to drag all that overhead into your application. I just don't see that. And I'm prognosticating. So, again, the last slide, don't believe anything I said.
Right, right. And Jigsaw was understandably an extremely large change to the platform.
That's
so
right.
I'm kind of being hypothetical here, but it'll be interesting
But
to
in
see
the
what sort of big features that we decide that we need. Like value types, the whole Valhalla project, generic reification. Those are big things that are going to take many years to work on.
They are.
And then you're going to say, okay, well, 12 had these 10 minor features. 13 now reifies generics. And so it's a little off balance when you have those kind of release cadences.
Yes, but also the part that needs to be injected into sort of the follow-on is, if you participate, you can actually help shape that. Right? So if you're not immersed in shaping the future, then who knows what might happen. But I think all of you in this room have a substantial voice in terms of giving the feedback and input into what we do. And we at Oracle get bashed a lot in terms of, well, you don't understand developers, you don't listen to them. In some senses, that's just, I think, baggage. But the reality is, based on the people that have come out here, the people you have the opportunity to connect with, it's actually opposite of the contrary. Your heroes are right behind you. Stephen, David, where is it? Heather, Yolong. These are your heroes. These are the ones you should be connected with on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis.
Any more questions? Yeah. Wait.
Oh, I thought we were going to happy hour. Rats.
Well, maybe can you give us for Java 10 that's coming out, do you know what one major feature that's coming out? Just give us a sneak preview.
Let's talk.
Off
Recording off. Is there a clapper? No. All right. We can chat. Yeah.
Cool. We still have time. The food's not here yet, but yeah, we should do that.
So who's coming to Lava 2 next year?
Well, I'm not sure if it will be Lava 2. We have to talk about this.
We'll have to talk about it.
All right, cool.
All right.
Thank you, Sharat.
Thank you.